On a chilly evening in New Orleans, the French Quarter was alive with its usual rhythm, the clinking of glasses from open-air cafes, the chatter of tourists, and the faint echo of jazz flowing from distant bars. Amidst the colourful neon glow and cobblestone charm, a small corner had its own kind of music. A 9-year-old girl named Lily sat on a weathered wooden stool, her tiny hands wrapped around an old violin. The instrument was scratched, its varnish peeling from years of use, but the way she held it was careful, almost sacred. At her feet lay an open violin case with just a few coins and crumpled bills, left by strangers who had stopped for a fleeting moment. Lily wasn't there for money alone. She was there because her late father had taught her that music wasn't just sound. It was heart, it was memory, it was survival. Ever since her mother had taken on double shifts as a waitress, Lily made it her quiet mission to help in whatever way she could. Each night she played to strangers, hoping the world would hear what her heart carried. That night, however, a different kind of attention approached her stage. A sleek, black limousine rolled up to the curb. Out stepped Charles Beaumont, a 45-year-old self-made millionaire who owned half the real estate along Bourbon Street. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a crisp designer suit, and carrying the kind of confidence only power and money could buy. Charles looked every inch the man who ruled the city with wealth. He noticed the small girl playing and smirked. To him, street performers were just background noise, not worth his time. Yet something about Lily's determination drew him closer. He crossed the street with slow, deliberate steps, his polished shoes clicking against the stone pavement. "Cute little act you've got here," Charles said, voice dripping with mockery. The small crowd that had formed around Lily grew quiet. Lily froze, unsure whether to stop playing. She lowered her bow, looking up at the tall man whose presence overshadowed her completely. Charles chuckled and leaned down, his expensive cologne invading the space. "Tell you what," he said loud enough for the bystanders to hear, "play something truly impressive. And maybe I'll adopt you," the crowd gasped. A few exchanged uncomfortable glances. To them, it sounded like nothing but cruel humor, a rich man mocking a little girl's innocence. But Lily didn't flinch. She pressed her lips together, lifted her chin, and raised the violin back to her shoulder. What followed was nothing short of breathtaking. Her bow touched the strings, and suddenly the street melted away. From that battered violin poured out a haunting melody, one that spoke of longing, of love lost, of dreams carried by fragile hope. Her tiny fingers moved with precision, yet her eyes shone with tears she refused to shed. The noisy street fell silent. Even the distant saxophone players and the clamor of nearby bars seemed to hush as Lily's music filled the air. Strangers who had been walking by stopped in their tracks, drawn in by the unexpected beauty. A mother held her child closer, a couple intertwined their fingers, and a group of tourists found themselves wiping their eyes. And Charles? The arrogance in his smile faded. His chest tightened in a way he hadn't felt in years. Each note pierced through the armor of his wealth and status, pulling at memories he had long buried. His own daughter, lost in a tragic accident years ago, had once begged him to listen to her piano recitals. But Charles had always been too busy, too focused on deals, meetings, and money. By the time he had realized what mattered, it was too late. Now in front of him, this little girl with nothing but courage and talent had unknowingly unlocked the guilt he carried. When Lily finished, there was no silence, only thunderous applause. The crowd erupted, cheering and clapping as coins and bills rained into her violin case. She bowed shyly, cheeks flushed, her chest rising and falling with the effort. Charles remained frozen. Slowly he knelt down to her level, his polished suit creasing against the cobblestones. His voice trembled. You reminded me of someone," he whispered, barely audible over the clapping. "You have a gift, child." Lily tilted her head. "So, are you going to adopt me?" she asked with innocent bluntness. The crowd chuckled softly, but Charles felt his throat tighten. He couldn't give her what she truly deserved, not in that instant. But he could do something. He reached into his wallet, pulling out not just bills, but a sleek business card. "I can't take you home tonight," he admitted. "But I can promise you this, you'll never play on the streets again." Her mother, who had been watching anxiously from across the street after finishing her shift, rushed over. She held Lily tightly, wary of the stranger. But when Charles introduced himself and offered to sponsor Lily's musical education, her skepticism turned into tears. Weeks later, Lily's world changed. No longer did she play in the cold streets. Instead, she found herself inside practice rooms with polished floors and grand pianos, alongside teachers who recognized her raw talent. Charles arranged everything: tuition, instruments, even private lessons with some of the city's best musicians. At first, Lily didn't understand why a rich man cared so much. But as she played for him privately one evening, she noticed the way his eyes welled with unspoken sorrow. She realized that in some way, she was not only healing herself and her mother, but also helping him mend his broken heart. Months later came the moment that would define her journey. Inside a grand auditorium filled with hundreds of guests, Lily stood under the glow of stage lights in a simple white dress. Her violin, polished and shining now, rested in her hands. The same girl who once played on the corner of Bourbon Street now stood as the youngest performer in the city's youth symphony. She lifted her bow, took a deep breath and began to play. The audience was mesmerized. Among them, front and center, was Charles Beaumont. His usually stern face was softened, his eyes glistening with tears he didn't bother to hide. For the first time in years, he clapped not as a businessman or a millionaire, but as a man who had rediscovered his heart. When Lily bowed at the end, the ovation shook the hall. And in that thunder of applause, she glanced at Charles, the man who once mocked her, but ended up becoming the one who believed in her the most. For both of them, it wasn't just music anymore. It was redemption.